Hello, Dr. Ray. I'm sure I'm going to get really good advice from you.
Why do I have to be the insightful professional?
Thank you for empowering me.
Here's what I think is going on.
I think you're a hoot and a half.
My idea, my theory, my guidance is a bit of a stretch.
I just love your show.
Does that comfort you?
No.
Am I close?
No. You are really smart.
I am sensitive and understanding and nurturing.
Your show to me is like a comedy information show.
Did I make you feel a lot better or what?
No, you made me feel worse.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Very nice to have you with me here on The Doctor Is In. This is the Monday variant of The Doctor Is In. This is E-Person Monday. I'm probably going to change that to E-People Monday because in my reach to be fully linguistically sensitive, person has son as one of its syllables. Yeah, and if you look back at the etiology of that word, I'm sure you'll see that it kind of touches in of the son. You know, James is a person of the son. It's back there somewhere, and you got to be real careful. Somebody's going to bring it up. I don't think, as far as I know, people has any such origins. It's safer. Doesn't sound as good as E-Person. E-People is probably less assailable. What is the purpose of E-Person Monday? Get calls on the radio. Get questions at the TV show. Many come through the mail. I almost said email. It's just such a habit. Come through the computer, the internet. They are missives. Well, again, okay, that's bad. Missives. You can't say miss. Ms. Ivs, M-S, period, Ivs. The common, and there for a while, I attempted to address them here and there throughout the call-in part of the program. And I realized that I can do more. I can get to more of them because people send them if I give a day to them. Now, one of the things that I do in reading them, I don't just like to read the script and then at the end offer thoughts or ideas. I enjoy pursuing them as I would pursue somebody talking to me, which means every third, fourth, fifth sentence I can make an observation, I can ask a question, I can speculate on what they're getting to. Many of them I select them for E-Person Monday, but they were selected 2-3 months ago or a month ago. Try to get to them as quick as I can. I don't want to be like the police officers and show up after the fight's over, you know. So I'll do what I can to get to them, and I forget how they ended or what the person asked or what they said in detail about this particular situation, and I'll make an observation or a speculation on what this is leading to, and sometimes I'm all excited because I see that, in fact, I got it right. I speculated it and got it right. And then sometimes I get to it and go, well, I missed that one. I mean, that did happen. It happened, last time it happened was 2002, I think it was. Somewhere in there. Andrew Kruchek can help you out with that. All right, we'll get to that. One of the most fascinating studies. Now, when I was in grad school, I had an internship, and I had to work with professors who did research. One of the interesting things about psychological research is that your obvious intent of the experiment is not your real intent. There's an ulterior intent. It's very, very common. So what we would do is we would design a study exploring some aspect of the human condition, and it looked to the subjects, and our subjects were either college sophomores or rats, one or the other. It's kind of interchangeable. So that said, we would design something that on its face was not really what we were looking at. One of the more fascinating types of those studies, and I obviously didn't do this, it was something I came across, The researchers wanted to explore the perception of being, what's the word I'm looking for? Prejudiced against because of some physical attribute. They told the folks that they would be going in for an interview, and they knew it wasn't a real interview. The subject knew it wasn't a real interview. But they put a very realistic-looking scar on their cheek. I saw the scar. Boy, it was not a fooler, that's for sure. They showed the person in the mirror the scar. So that they were clearly aware that this was something very obvious to their appearance. Before they went in for the actual interview itself, they said, look, we got to do some touching up. We got to do some touching up. Now, they did not put the person in front of a mirror for this part. What they effectively did was remove the scar. Not a real scar. That was not hard to do. It was a fake scar. But they removed it. They took it off. Person went in for the interview. They came out, and they interviewed the person. And I forget how many of them there were. The majority of them commented that the interviewer had a hard time not looking at the scar, which, by the way, wasn't there. Some of them said that they felt that they were being biased against because of their physical appearance, because of that scar. Some of them said that they doubted that they were going to get the job because of that pronounced scar. In essence, the theme that emerged was, I was a victim. I was prejudiced against. That person was biased against me because of that aspect of my physical appearance. Of course, there was no scar. They had a preconceived prejudice on their own part about how this other person would react to them. I don't remember exactly the details and how many of them felt that the interviewer couldn't help but staring at their scar, which of course wasn't there. But they were primed. They were primed to look for prejudice. They were primed to look for bias. They were primed to look for scrutiny because of this. The very, very twicky experimenters told them, we want to see how an aspect of physical appearance will alter another person's perception and will affect your being able to be judged objectively for a position. I don't remember the details on whether the interview was viewed as a legitimate interview or the interviewers thought it was a legitimate interviewer and the subjects knew it wasn't. I don't remember the details on all of this, but it was such an absolutely fascinating look, no pun intended, of how powerful preconceived notions, narratives are about how someone will treat you or react to you. As a psychologist, I see this all the time. I see this in something called social anxiety, which is a hypersensitivity, a hypervigilance to people sizing me up in social situations, scrutinizing me, looking at me, judging me, when in many cases, no such thing is happening. They're probably not even aware you're there. especially if it's a larger group. But that is at the root of much social anxiety, of much avoidance, of many, many social situations involving groups especially, where the person says, I just can't handle that they might be thinking about me in a certain way. Fascinating stuff. Psychologists, in the words of that interpersonal sage, Elmer Fudd, vowie, vowie, twicky. All right. Get to your e-persons right after the break. Organ and piano, dueling it out. Thank you for joining me here, Dr. Ray, here on The Doctor Is In. Appreciate your company. This is the Monday version, E-Person Monday, my producer man over there in Ann Arbor, who cooperates with the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network to produce this program. Been doing it for some, how long, Andrew? 23 years, something like that, 24 years. I was just absolutely shocked when they came to me my junior year in high school and said, would you like to start a program? All right, one more question I got to answer. Some of these e-persons are very short. Dr. Ray, what makes you feel you're getting old? Well, that's easy. Last week, I had to renew my license. And every time you renew it, you got to take an updated picture. In Ohio, anyway. I think it's in Arizona. You can use the same picture. I guess your birth picture. You can use your birth picture. Anyway, not really. I took the picture, and they show it to you. And I thought to myself, well, that's not a bad picture. So when you start thinking your driver's license picture is a good picture, you're getting up there. My pictures don't do me justice, really. I noticed that. None of the pictures that I take do me justice. They look too much like me. Dr. Ray, there was a caller who was anxious about not being married at the age of 23 or 24. Yes. Some weeks back, we had a young lady called, delightful young lady, personable. I can't go so far as to say, oh, just a beautiful human being. I don't know that, but she was personable on the phone. The closer you get to defining the context, the more likely you are to be accurate. Just know that. So when I say she was personable on the phone, she was delightful to talk to, that's safe. If I go any further and I say she's obviously a very religious woman, or obviously a very put together, mature, looking for, that could be, but I have no way of knowing that. All right. She was feeling left behind because everybody around her was getting married. Well, I don't know if everybody was, but she said yes, some of her friends were getting married, and at the age of 23 or 24, she's thinking, okay, what's going on here? My standards too high? Is my selection pool too narrow? What is happening? And she was starting to get nervous about this. He says, there's a guy writing, I listened to a snippet of Father Mike, and I'm thinking about, he's talking about Father Mike Schmitz, talking about how Leah from the Old Testament wanted Jacob to love her. After the first 3 sons, she named her son Judah. I believe, quote, let God be praised is the meaning of Judah. In short, Dr. Ray, I just want to put it out there that if she's thinking she is, she's not unlovable. I didn't pick that up in the call, that she was thinking she was unlovable. I think it was more of I'm getting a little nervous here because it's not as easy to find a suitable partner, especially when your values and morals don't necessarily parallel those of the general cultures. God has made sure she is lovable. And he says, do not live life waiting to be loved by someone else. Know that you are loved by our Lord. I am seeing, though, and it's a very, very common phenomenon, I am seeing more faith-filled young ladies having a much, much harder time finding someone that they can share their deepest held beliefs, morals about life with. Just a small statistic in one aspect of that. Saw a survey that said the number of people who enter marriage having been chaste, not chaste as in C-H-A-S-E-D, but chaste as C-H-A-S-T-E, is, ready, survey says, 3%. I look at my aunts and uncles. Big Italian family. They had 6 pairs. 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 pairs of aunts and uncles. All of them married. Most all of them, well, first of all of them married to Catholics. And 1, 2, 3 out of the 5 married to Italian Catholics. Now, what does that speak of? It doesn't necessarily speak that they were searching for that particular type of spouse. It says they were much more available. Back in the 60s, roughly 70% of identified Catholics at least went to church once a week, went to Sunday Mass. It was probably more than that in the 50s when my aunts and uncles, most of them got married. So yeah, the reality is that unless you simply say, I will sacrifice much of what I believe in, much of what I want in a spouse to be married, and then the question becomes, what kind of marriage will that be and will it last? There's just very realistic delays. And if you even look at the surveys, the marriage age is just getting later and later, especially for the young ladies. And I don't know what to do about that, to tell you the truth. I commonly advise people, you got to put yourself in situations and places and groups where there are like-thinking people. This gentleman, and I've talked about this before. I think, okay, Dr. Ray. No, I don't have time. I'm gonna hold off on that one because this one deserves a fair amount of its time because he wrote me back and forth, and I wrote him an answer that's generally longer than I usually write simply because of the numbers of these. So let me go over here to my other stack and see what I have here that I might address. Dr. Ray, is there a difference between worry and anxiety? Well, yes. But worry often provokes anxiety. Anxiety is a much more general sense. It's composed of a physical reaction. It's composed of an emotional reaction, which is usually some kind of unpleasant feeling. In worst cases, it's a dread. It is also composed of a cognitive component, which is I have to interpret what is going on with me. Worry is more targeted. Worry is, this is the subject that I'm worried about. Now, sometimes it's something that is impending. It's going to happen. The more treacherous kind of worry is what shrinks call what ifs. In other words, these are things that could happen conceivably, but as yet, there's no evidence that they're going to happen. And they may be quite unlikely to happen. Example of this. Remember the movie? Well, maybe you don't. There was a movie called Jaws. It was techno-realism at the time. It was really very cutting edge. Now, this great white seemed demonically possessed. It just attacked anybody who had was brazen enough to enter his briny kingdom. Well, there was a very definite decline in beach visitors after that movie. Now, Shark attacks are very, very rare. They are a small handful worldwide in any given year. Yet, the scare of a shark attack kept a lot of people, untold numbers, from being relaxed in the water at the beach. Many of them just totally avoided the water altogether. Now, I think that's all sort of past, but that was decades ago. Now, that was a what if. What if I get attacked by a shark? Well, there's nothing you can plan for in that. If I say, what if my kid flunks out of college? I can have a backup plan for that. What am I going to do if that happens? When you got something that is unlikely to happen and you're still occupied with that worry, it can torture you. It can flat out torture you. What if my child in my womb has complications of birth? What if there are developmental complications? Now, that can happen, but fortunately, most babies are alive, well, and thriving. But that worry itself can just torment a person all the way through pregnancy if they focus on it. So that's worry, and it can create anxiety. But anxiety is a much more diffuse thing. It can be attached to a particular place, circumstance, object, animal, or it can be panic-stricken. I've had panic attacks. Or it can, I haven't personally, but, well, I did have one way back. So anxiety kind of is an umbrella over worry. If you want to look at it that way, that's a simplification. All right, I'll get to this from this gentleman when I get back. This is Dr. Ray.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. The first new week in our 251st year as a nation is seeing major federal program funds restored to Planned Parenthood, despite relatively smaller cuts to the abortion giant's explicit sex ed programs. Yet, despite lack of decisive congressional action, pro-life advocates remain cautiously optimistic about the pro-life momentum in public opinion and citizen actions, especially in pro-life states. Pro-life groups over the Independence Day weekend drew attention to the idea that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration are interdependent ideas woven to protect and give dignity to all human life. This is Life News Radio. If you or someone you love is hurting after abortion, this is for you. A Rachel's Vineyard retreat is therapy for the soul. Many participants who have been trapped in anger toward themselves and others experience forgiveness. Peace is found, lives restored, a sense of hope and meaning for the future is finally rediscovered. Visit rachelsvineyard.org or call 877-HOPE-4-ME. The right to life in Europe continues facing challenges. As France may be on a collision course with coercive assisted suicide, 6% of all deaths in Holland are arranged. In the UK, abortion interdicts 1 in 3 otherwise live births. Alliance Defending Freedom attorneys are busy fighting censorship of especially faith-based counselors when working with clients conflicted between gender dysphoria and personal faith. Local Missouri ordinances and Colorado laws have been gagging voluntary conversations under these conditions to favor dangerously permanent therapies instead of psychotherapy. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Very nice to have you with me. It's Dr. Ray. This is our Monday variant of The Doctor Is In. This is E-Person Monday. This is something that kind of surprised me when I got it. Hey, Dr. Ray, I'm the dad who called in, now this was some weeks back, about my 13-year-old daughter. I'll just give you a little bit of context on this. He was essentially saying that his daughter was having almost daily significant meltdowns, bad meltdowns. busting stuff up, screaming, etc., etc. And obviously didn't have a whole lot of time to explore it. But from what he said, it sounded like, okay, when she was thwarted or frustrated. And he didn't indicate there were any kinds of other things going on. He more or less just said, this is what she does. And he was clearly thinking something was seriously wrong with her. He said this about my 13-year-old daughter, who I almost thought, now when I think he said almost, he was referring to the fact that he called me. And he was thinking she was somewhat possessed until we talked. Excuse me. So, who I almost thought was possessed, ... maybe. What I did think was that there was a serious mental illness and she needed medication. I see this frequently. I think it's safe to say that there have been radical alterations in overall parenting style the last generation or two. Authority is not anywhere near as comfortably exerted by parents. And the experts have really thrown out a lot of theories at parents who have made them second-guess themselves, made them wonder, be a more quote-unquote enlightened psychological parent. And one of the byproducts of this, now it can work with some kids, but one of the byproducts is that it doesn't work for some kids and they get more and more nasty. I see it all the time. It's in my office. All right. And they think something is seriously wrong with the child. At the point of my call, I told you how I was waiting to get into a psychiatrist. And you said, Trevor, there's a good possibility they will give your daughter medication, drugs. He said, I was speechless because in my mind it was, yeah, I need drugs for this girl. All right. So once again, this is part of the reason why there's such heavy, widespread medicalizing with chemicals of our children. Heavy. Because the parents are coming in, the kids are out of control. It looks really bizarre. You know, you're a kid, you can go all crazy. So, given that, you think, this is something wrong here. This is a mind that's not working. All right. This is kind of sad. Everyone I talked to told me their child was the same. Now, keep in mind, this is a 13-year-old throwing meltdown 3-year-old fits. She's not 3, she's 13, which tells you something. It doesn't tell you so much about the girl. It tells you a lot about what's going on in the house most of the time. And these are not just I'm mad fits. These are I'm going to destroy fits. I'm going to scream fits. I'm going to drag this out to make you all pay a price fits. That's what he kind of described. Everyone I talked to told me their child was the same. Or a friend of their child was the same. And they all needed drugs and therapy. Well, the dirty little secret is individual therapy with 13-year-old behavior problem kid is very poorly effective. It's not very successful at all. He says, heck, my own family doctor, when I played the audio of one of these episodes, said she needs to see a psychiatrist. Well, of course, she sounded nuts, screaming and carrying on and Of course. But parents kind of underestimate how carried away a kid can really get. But a close buddy of mine told me, why not call Dr. Ray? Well, I mean, I could have helped him a lot more if he'd come in to see me. Finally, I got up the nerve to call you, told you how my angry 13-year-old was losing her mind, shouting, throwing, breaking, slamming. Episodes could last up to an hour, and they would occur at least once a day, averaging close to twice a day. Holy mackerel, I could see how he'd think this. You told me to let her know that this behavior is not acceptable and there would be major consequences if she did it again. You picked up my skepticism on this call, but you assured me that you have dealt with tons of these cases, and almost all of them were because the parents were overwhelmed. It's true. It is true. Even where there are special needs situations, developmental problems, autism, this stuff can happen, and the parents simply get overwhelmed with dealing with it. This is great. I must admit, I was thinking, does Dr. Ray even know what he is talking about? Well, anyway, we laid out the new law, the consequences, the blackout, etc. It has been almost 2 weeks. I hope I'm not jinxing this. And no episodes. Now, think about this. Wild-eyed, crazy-looking episodes once, twice a day with all kinds of manifesting craziness. He told her what he was going to do. He laid it out. And it sounds like he didn't even have to do it. That's the other irony to this. He more or less just said, this is what we're going to do. And the child went, oh, well, okay. I know it's only been 2 weeks, Dr. Ray, but this was happening every day, and we were close to twice a day. I wanted to thank you. She is not behaviorally perfect. We've taken things away, but the episodes have stopped, and she seems happier. Our whole family has noticed the difference. Whole family, probably meaning his extended family. Here it is. He says, you were right. And I thank God you were. I think he was admitting I was right because he was so skeptical that I had anything to offer him regarding this. Now, I want to comment a lot more on this because he brings up some good points, and I'll tell you what I wrote back to him. This is Dr. Ray. Dr. Ray, did your kids ever ask you what it was like growing up? I told them. I'll show you. Shut off the computer. Here's a popsicle. Play outside until it's dark. There you go. Summarize it. Growing up. Dr. Ray here. The doctor is in Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Co-production of the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network and Ave Maria Radio Communications. Now, I have been rather detail-like going over an e-person I got from, let's see, he gave a name. Yeah, his name, his call name was Trevor. He called in, just summarize it real quick in case you weren't with me before the break, and you know who you are. Called in, 13-year-old daughter throwing major league fits. Didn't indicate that there was anything significant going on other than these horrible fits. And they were just wild. And they were happening daily, long, nasty. Everybody around him said, something's wrong with your kid. You got to get drugs. She needs drugs. She needs drugs. She needs therapy. So I said, I can't diagnose your daughter from here, but I would suggest you try something. And I gave him some suggestions on how to deal with these. And he was skeptical. You could tell he was skeptical. But he did it. And he wrote me back, and he said, unbelievable. We haven't had an episode in 2 weeks. Now, from what I can tell, as I said prior to the break, he didn't even have to enforce any of the consequences. Maybe he did, but it was kind of like he just warned her. And I've had that happen in the office. Parents will come in, and they'll say, this is what the child is doing. And I'll say, okay, here's a response. There's something to do. And they'll come back, and I'll say, did you have to do it? And they'll say, no. I say, what do you mean, no? He said, well, we just told him what we were going to do. And it hasn't happened since. I said, well, what's that tell you? All he had to do is be told? He didn't even have to experience what you said? I said, that ain't a very strong-willed kid. which they think was just totally strong-willed. And in this case, there were two things going on. One, he thought his daughter had a mental illness, and two, conceivably she could be possessed. And I hear this among very religious parents when they got a kid going crazy on them, especially consistently crazy in their behavior now, not mentally deranged, not psychotic. They think there's some demonic involvement, or they question whether there is, and almost never is there. Okay, so I wrote him back after he admitted, Dr. Ray, you were right, which I kind of grinned, and I said, Trevor, I think that shows you that your daughter has a lot more self-control than people have been giving her credit for. I see many people who are convinced something is seriously wrong with their child, when most of the time, if the parents alter their approach and have calm, confident authority, things get dramatically better. I'm glad for your family. But just a note of caution. This kind of behavior can resurface periodically. But if you handle it well, it should return to a calmer situation. That's true, because what happens is parents say, oh, it was going so well, it was doing so good, and then, oh, we're back to square one. No, you're not. You're not back to square one. First of all, you had some weeks of dramatically better behavior, so you're not back to square one. The child is either testing the limits again, or the situation presented itself and it frustrated them and they erupted. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, you're going to deal with it. It's the way it is. That's how habits are broken. They don't just flip a switch and gone. No, they generally taper off sporadically. He wrote back, I also think that my daughter might have started to think something was wrong with her as well. Now, you got to figure she was getting messages from people around her, whether she was hearing it directly or picking it up, that what is wrong with this kid? And I told him in the call, I feel very confident that there's probably nothing wrong. How's that? I can be confident that probably. I feel like a weatherman. 30% chance nothing's wrong with your child. I felt confident nothing was wrong with this child. I also think she might have started to think something was wrong with her as well, because we were being brought to more doctors who were talking to a counselor. I even suggested to her that she may not be able to control these episodes. He goes, now I feel terrible about that. Before our big chat, you suggested that I start with, there is nothing wrong with you, etc. I believe this has improved her mood, just a thought. Well, I concur with your thought. Absolutely. See, that's one of the problems you have with a kid who is basically allowed to rule the parents. They're not happy kids. They're agitated. They're moody. They're trip switch. It's not a good way to exist. And I use the analogy of, if you had a boss that was unpredictable, if you had a boss that you were constantly in some kind of conflict or friction-filled interchange with, would you like on to work? No, you'd want to avoid that environment if you could. But since you couldn't because you needed the money or you had to work, same thing with a kid, they lived there, then it creates an agitation, an overall agitation. He said, I believe this has improved her mood. One of the things I most commonly hear from parents after they have kind of taken control of the situation, and they thought they were taking control. That's the misguiding aspect of all this. They thought they were. They will say things like this. It's like I'm living with a different child. He is so much happier. I've not seen him this happy in a long time. She's affectionate, Boy, we were not having too much affection. But she told me yesterday how much she loved me, and she kissed me. I was shocked. Yes, because what you've done is you have removed the friction point. It was ugly between you. It's safe to say that you don't have any adult-to-adult relationship like this, do you? No. That's why you don't want to allow the child-to-adult relationship get that ugly. Once it gets that ugly, all kinds of byproducts happen. You go to confession every 2 weeks talking about how awful you are. The kid is unhappy. You're unhappy. And the other siblings are looking at this going, this is dominating our family life. So yes, once you take control, all kinds of positive things start to happen. One of the great byproducts of that. Dr. Ray.
I just wanted to start to say that I really enjoy your show. I've been listening to EWTN and found your show, and I really love your wit. I like your humor. I just think that you're a funny guy, give great advice and feedback, and talk people through stuff really well. So I just really get a kick out of the show.
Well, don't stop now. I mean, you're using a lot of superlatives, Derek, and then you kind of stopped. One last segment for an e-person here. Is there any way my son can be evaluated by a psychologist without suggesting everything will be kept secret from his parents except for self-harm? Context. It is my son's pediatrician's recommendation that he be evaluated by a pediatric psychologist. Okay, my question always is why? What's the evaluation for? If it is usually, and kind of piggybacking off of our previous e-person, if it's because of behavior problems or discontent, usually which follow behavior problems, I guess, yeah, sure, you can do that. My experience has been much of the time the best approach on these kinds of situations is to work with the parents to get the situation under control. And I've had many parents come to me and say that, they thought something was wrong until we worked together, and then they realized nothing was wrong. I was disappointed to find out that the confidentiality agreement applies to an 8-year-old and would be explained in age-appropriate terms. Therapy with 8-year-olds is not really very successful. I mean, it can be beneficial. I'm not saying it can't. But generally, it's not very successful because therapy requires generalization from the office into the real world. And 8-year-olds are generally not very good at that, and also they don't control their environment. Got to have some control over your environment to generalize from the office to the world. Is there any way my son can be evaluated without suggesting everything will be kept secret from his parents? Well, I don't know the laws. I don't know the standards of the psychology boards in your state. I know that in some places it is... there can be some kind of agreement made, and I don't know how that would work with an 8-year-old. There can be some kind of agreement made that you can have access to whatever was discussed, or that it goes beyond just self-harm or threaten to harm somebody else. It can be something that would be to the child's well-being, which is a broad term. To be clear, I am fine if he doesn't want to indulge what happens, and he prefers privacy. What gives me great pause is to state that the parents, the ones who have been given the gift of caring for him, will now be purposely left out of his care. Yeah, and I think that's an understandable concern, something you might want to talk about in further detail with the evaluating psychologist or the therapist. I know what I would do is I would reassure the parents that if the child is talking to me, and usually this is older kids, these are 15, 16, 17-year-olds, if they're talking with me something about that would affect their well-being. For example, if the kid says, I'm smoking marijuana, my parents don't know it. Well, now that's significant. Okay, now that's not direct self-harm, but it can impact the child's well-being, certainly. So, that might be something to incorporate under the umbrella of self-harm. It hardly seems safe, now this is the parent, or prudent to teach him that keeping things secret from us is a benefit to him. We are, in my experience, observation, professional opinion, a heavily over-therapized society. We used to have a saying in grad school: treatment creates the need for a problem. Therapy is held out as a broad-based cure-all for all that ails you, psychologically, emotionally, behaviorally, developmentally, relationally, mood-wise. It can be helpful, of course. The problem comes in, and many, many people that I see in my office have already seen people. And usually the refrain is the same. It didn't help me, or I didn't benefit from it. Now, typically that oftentimes means people think therapy's magic and somehow they're going to sprinkle dust on them and they're all going to get better, when in fact it involves a whole lot of self-motivation. But that said, they were kind of surprised that it didn't have the immediately curative effect that they hoped it would have or were told it would have. That person needs therapy. That's what, get therapy. That's a common refrain in our culture. But the problem with that refrain is, yeah, they may be doing a whole lot of things that are causing them or other people problems in their lives, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be a therapy candidate. Doesn't mean they have the will, the wherewithal, the desire, the motive to actually change what they're doing. More often than not, life has to change them because they experience the downsides of what they're doing. And with an 8-year-old, I mean, I do not do therapy with 8-year-olds. I will talk to the parents and I will find out what is going on from the parents' perspective. And much of the time, much of the time, well over 90%, it's something that can be solved by working with the parents, even if it's a mood thing. Because a lot of times the mood thing is related to other aspects in the child's lives. 8-year-olds aren't naturally depressed. 8-year-olds aren't naturally discontent. There's stuff going on around them that you can work with. All right, well, I got to go. Things are all done here. Thank you so very much for joining me. I'm Dr. Ray. Always walk with God.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.